You're basically just a couch ornament at this point. Maybe it's time you moved into a home." That was the line my son Eric threw in my face during his daughter's 17th birthday party. In front of nearly 20 people with a voice that didn't hesitate for a second. I was pouring orange juice into a glass, the pitcher still cold. A drop ran down the sleeve of my shirt, but I didn't feel it. All I saw was my own faint reflection in the oven door across from me. An old man standing in a kitchen he'd helped pay to build, now regarded as a superfluous decoration. My daughter-in-law Amanda stood right there, a smirk on her face. He just watches TV all day and pretends he's tired. I mean, what else is he good for? No one defended me. No one was surprised. My granddaughter Natalie glanced at me exactly once, a look that lasted less than a second. Then she stared down at her plate as if I didn't exist. My name is Franklin Davis. I was an aerospace engineer for over 40 years. I used to design the load-bearing pins for jet wing flaps, where a minor deviation could bring down an entire aircraft. Perhaps that's why I can spot it when my own family starts trying to phase me out. After my wife passed away from a stroke, Eric said, "Dad, you shouldn't live alone. Our house is big. Come live with us. Natalie needs her grandpa too." I agreed. I sold my old 2-story house on Maple Street and contributed $245,000 toward the new house that Eric and Amanda picked out in the suburbs. They said they would put my name on the deed as a co-owner, and they did. But soon everyone started calling it Eric and Amanda's house. No one mentioned my name anymore. I became the one living on their charity. And then an obstacle. I didn't react at the party that day. I didn't leave the table. I didn't answer. I learned from my old job the one who remains silent is the one who has time to observe. I washed my glass, went to my room, and closed the door softly. No one noticed. No one knocked to ask if I was okay. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out an old file folder where I kept copies of bank statements, the house deed, old letters, and things I thought I'd never need again. But now, I needed them. Badly. I remembered the first detail that had raised my suspicion, an email from the bank sent over 3 weeks ago. A new mortgage application in my name, with an electronic signature, one I had never made. I had dismissed it at the time, thinking it was a mistake. There was no more room for doubt. They were preparing to cut me out of everything. I turned on my computer and logged into our joint bank account. There were several large withdrawals with no clear reason. A few loans in the name of Franklin Davis had recently been approved. Everything looked legal. And that was the most dangerous part. I'm not a man who angers easily. I don't need to shout. I've sat in a pressure chamber for 12 hours straight without taking my eyes off the gauge. I know that silence is the most powerful tool when you're searching for the truth. And I knew this whoever saw me as a couch ornament had seriously underestimated the man they were dealing with. As an aerospace engineer, I was trained to detect discrepancies of a few thousandths of an inch on a load-bearing axis. I could analyze a composite material model based on a hairline fracture less than an inch long. The flaw is never in the obvious place. It's in the detail that people repeat so often. They assume it's harmless. Eric and Amanda were no different. Ever since I went quiet after the party, I noticed they relaxed. Their guards were down, no more pretending. They thought I had accepted my fate. That was their first mistake. 2 days later, I bought a discreet mini camera, the kind used to inspect faulty equipment in an engine bay. It was the size of a fingertip, mounted with a magnet, had a 48. Our battery recorded continuously in 1080p and had no indicator light. I didn't buy it online. I went to an old equipment shop near the airport, the kind that still sells components young people today wouldn't know what to do with. I paid in cash, leaving no trail. That night, I mounted the camera behind a bookshelf in the living room, aimed at the kitchen doorway, where Eric often took calls and Amanda left her messy paperwork. The camera doesn't blink. It has no emotions. It just records the truth. I didn't expect anything on the first day. But on the third day at 1 a.m., I heard a rustling in the living room. I didn't turn on a light. I just opened my phone and accessed the camera's feed. The frame showed Eric. He was rummaging through the wooden cabinet under the desk. His left hand held a stack of papers. His right held a phone to his ear. I turned on the audio. It was as clear as if he were standing right behind me. No, she hasn't noticed anything. She still thinks we're just stressed. I'll get her to sign the amendment next week. Tell the broker to be ready. Yes, Franklin Davis is still on the deed. But not for long. I paused the video. Not because I was shocked, but to analyze. An engineer never panics when he finds a flaw. He documents it, flags it, and reviews the entire system. And when he's certain, he disables the entire power train. I extracted the video clip and saved it to a hard drive. I backed it up to a USB stick. Then the next morning, I went to the bank, unannounced. I brought my folder of original documents, a copy of the co-ownership deed, the original signatures of my late wife and me, and an old document, the financial power of attorney my lawyer had drawn up 6 years ago. The bank teller eyed me with suspicion at first. But after reviewing the documents, her tone changed completely. Sir, I'll forward this to our internal credit fraud department. Would you like to place a security alert on your accounts? I nodded. Block all third-party activity, and if anyone calls asking about these accounts, please record the call. I'll take full responsibility. When I got home, I made a cup of tea. The black tea my wife used to love. My hand was steady. My heart rate was even. I started securing my bedroom door from the inside with a keyhole blocker, a small metal plate I used to use to block drafts during field equipment tests. A thin piece of tin was all it took to keep a key from entering the lock. No need to change the lock. Just disable it at the right moment. I wasn't afraid of someone breaking in. I just didn't want anyone to think they had the right to. That night, Amanda knocked on my door. Her voice was as sweet as overly sugared syrup. Dad, I know Eric was a little harsh the other day. Please don't take it to heart. We just want things to be stable. I didn't answer right away. I spoke through the locked door. Thank you. But from now on, everything will be done by the book. Silence. Then the sound of retreating footsteps. I didn't need to hear anything else. The camera doesn't blink. And neither will I. I once taught a young engineer that no failure is accidental if it appears at the most opportune time and at the most vulnerable point. Forging a 71-year-old man's signature doesn't require advanced skill. It just requires the forger to believe I'm no longer sharp enough to notice. But he forgot one thing. I spent 30 years writing design specs by hand. I know the curves of my own letters like I know the veins on my hand. On Monday afternoon, I received an envelope from the county recorder's office. A plain white envelope, laser-printed ink with the subject line, Confirmation of Amendment to Property Power of Attorney. The signature was my name. But it wasn't my signature. My whole life I've used only one type of pen, a fountain pen with a medium nib and dark blue ink. I write decisively, never connecting the K and L in my first name. On this form, the ink was a faded black from a gel pen, and there was a flourish at the end of the S in Davis, a stroke I have never made. I put on my glasses, placed the paper on my desk, and switched on a high-intensity LED lamp. Under the white light, the ink had a slight sheen, the sign of a scanned signature printed from an office machine. A tiny dot near the margin, I recognized it immediately. This was a signature scanned from another document, then pasted onto a new one. I put the document back in its envelope, locked it in my drawer, and then dialed a name I hadn't spoken in 2 years, Raymond Hale. My retired lawyer, the man who worked with my wife and me on our original will. He was the only person I trusted when he said, "The law is like an airplane's flap, Mr. Davis. Off by 3 degrees and the whole system comes down." Raymond's office was on the 3rd floor of an old red brick building with a creaky elevator. When I walked in, he looked up from a pile of documents, took off his glasses, and frowned as if he couldn't believe his eyes. "Franklin, I thought you'd retired and forgotten all about paperwork." I sat down and placed the envelope on his desk. "You should see this before you make any jokes." Raymond opened it. He read for less than 20 seconds, and his face hardened. "This signature, it's not yours." I nodded. "I know, I didn't sign it, but it's on file with the county." Raymond was silent. After a few minutes, he got up, locked his office door, and then spoke. "Franklin, if this was filed to change the terms of co-ownership, the person who filed it isn't just committing a civil offense. They may be setting the stage to remove you from the property entirely." I replied, my voice as steady as a pressure gauge. "I don't need a warning. I need you to pull the records. And I need certified copies of every document from the local system." Raymond exhaled, pulled my personal file, and nodded. "I'll do it. But if you want to fight back, you're going to need something stronger." I opened my leather briefcase and took out the USB drive with the camera footage. I have video. I have audio. And I have technical skills. We are going to peel back every layer of the system they've built, like taking apart an engine bolt by bolt. I don't need a quick win. I just need to be certain. On my way home, I walked through the living room. Eric was laughing on the phone, probably with the bank. Amanda looked at me and forced a smile. I didn't stop. I didn't smile back. I just thought, a signature can be forged. But my memory can't. And I remember very clearly who was the first to want my name off this house. I used to inspect jet engines after every emergency landing. The first thing I learned is that the real damage isn't in the part that burned. It's in the part that was quietly overheating for a long time unnoticed. Eric didn't suddenly change as people might think. He wasn't accidental. He was programmed, strategic. And I, a man who used to check data logs hour by hour, began to analyze my son's behavior like a slow pressure leak. I started from the moment Amanda moved in. Back then, I was still living in my old house. Eric said they were staying temporarily to save money for a house. At the time, it seemed reasonable. But now I remember every time we talked about finances, Eric had a way of planting information. "You and Mom don't need such a big house anymore. I'll handle the paperwork for you guys down the road. Older people tend to forget details about their assets." He never said it directly. But each sentence was another brick in the wall. He was building a perception that my value was diminishing in my own son's eyes. Raymond emailed me the next day. I checked the notary public logs. "Eric came in to ask about inheritance laws 8 months before your wife passed away." There was no official reason given at the time. I read that sentence over and over, not out of surprise, but because in the data bank of my mind, it connected to another sequence. 3 weeks after my wife's stroke, Eric invited me to dinner and proposed I move. 4 days after that, he sent the first real estate link for the house we're in now. And it was my own hand that signed the $245,000 transfer on a rainy afternoon after he said Mom wouldn't want you to be lonely. I'll carry the rest of the weight for her. Now I realized I wasn't given a choice. I was led. I went back to check my camera setup. I had installed another one this time, in the bookshelf in the den where Eric often made calls when he thought I was asleep. That night he called someone. It sounded like a real estate broker. She doesn't even check her emails anymore. Once the report's in, We can move fast. No, he's not legally out of the house yet. But once we push the mental evaluation through the court, we'll assign me guardian rights. After that, it's just paperwork. I stopped the video. I analyzed his voice, no panic, no hesitation. He spoke like someone who had rehearsed his lines. I knew this type from quality assurance audits technicians who hide a flaw by making the machine look like it's fine. Eric was the same. I noted every detail in my notebook just as I would with an engine file. Ethical deviation. Feigned intent for mom, but acted for personal gain. Concealment behavior changed. Linked accounts created secondary emails under my name. Timing prediction. Targeted my period of grief over my wife, a window of reduced resistance. I looked at my analysis. It was no different from a circuit board with the wrong components installed. And now, it was time for me to remove every screw in the system he had built. I once saw a technician try to cover up a crack in an airplane fuselage with silicone caulk instead of replacing the panel. He told the oversight committee it was just surface fatigue. A month later, the wing flap failed during a stress test. No one died. But that man never worked as an engineer again. The problem wasn't the crack. It was in mislabeling the truth to cover up a system in the process of failing. On a Thursday afternoon, I received a plain envelope with no return address. On it was a single cold line of text, petition for evaluation of civil competency. At the bottom was my name, Franklin Davis. The reason listed in the box, exhibiting signs of cognitive decline, paranoia, and inability to manage daily affairs. I wasn't surprised, but I felt disgusted, not because they wanted guardianship, but because they were using feigned compassion to carry out a purge. They didn't scream at me. They printed forms, got them stamped, and mailed them. I called Raymond. He answered on the third ring. "I take it you got the letter," I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "I have good news for you," Raymond said. I traced it. The doctor who signed the petition is Dale McKinley. He retired last March. But he still does private consultations. There's a wire transfer from a secondary account in Amanda's name dated 2 months ago. I hung up and opened my notebook. I wrote a simple line. They don't want me dead. They just want me to cease to exist legally. I'd seen this in the aerospace industry. When a company doesn't want to take responsibility for a faulty part, they don't issue a recall. They just change the technical standards, so the flaw is no longer considered a flaw. Eric and Amanda weren't evicting me. They were redefining me for the court. That night I went into my study at 10 p.m. I installed another small camera in the desk lamp, the kind I use to inspect air ducts in an engine. I laid out a decoy file of papers, a blank property contract needing only a signature. Early the next morning, I reviewed the footage. Eric entered the room looking around. He didn't turn on the main light. He sat at the desk. He pulled a stack of papers from his pocket. Let's hope the old man signs soon. Otherwise, we'll need that second report. We'll say he's been locking himself in, getting paranoid, checking cameras, talking to no one. I paused the video. He said checking cameras. I smiled. He had just confirmed I was of sound mind, because only a sane man would install cameras. The next morning, I went to the law office. Raymond reviewed the video, the scanned copy of the fraudulent competency evaluation, and the wire transfer record. Franklin, he said, we have enough to file a suit. The charges include conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, and willful manipulation of property rights. I just nodded. No joy, no outrage. I only asked, can we remain silent until the very last minute? I want to give them a sense of victory, right before the collapse. Raymond smirked. I understand. The best engineers don't fix a flaw immediately. They let the system fail at precisely the right moment, so that no one can argue with the result. In the aviation industry, when a crash occurs, they don't blame the pilot first. They reconstruct the final seconds in the cockpit. They analyze every word from the black box. They recreate the script not to assign blame, but to prove that a disaster is the result of a chain of flawed ethical decisions disguised as expertise. Eric was the same. He was the misguided pilot of a family still pretending he was in control for the common good. I began to collect the ethical script that Eric and Amanda had been building for a year. Dad's old, he shouldn't be stressed. You don't need to worry about finances, Dad. We'll handle it. It's best if you stay quiet. I'm respecting you by not saying anything. The cameras are just proof that he's paranoid. It all sounded reasonable. Like changing the maximum pressure rating in a technical manual to hide an overloaded combustion chamber. I started using their own tone against them. I wrote a handwritten note, blue ink concise, and left it on the dining table. Thank you both for your concern. I will sign the necessary papers on Sunday during a family meeting, in front of everyone. It's more appropriate than signing in secret. Don't you think I deliberately made my handwriting a little shaky? Just enough to make them think I was tired. I didn't write that letter because I was weak. I wrote it because I know that a scriptwriter always craves a triumphant final act. On Saturday night, I installed a small self-activating audio recorder under the meeting table, the kind once used to record ambient noise during fuel line tests. Small 10-hour battery, no indicator light. I printed out 3 copies of my evidence. 1. The property report with the forged signature. 2. The payment record from Amanda's account to Dr. Dale. 3. A transcript of the video from the living room camera Eric planning to secure guardianship. I placed them all in a stiff binder clipped with a plastic spine like a technical report ready for an investigative board. Sunday, 4 p.m. The house felt as suffocating as an old pressure chamber. Eric set out pastries, Amanda brewed tea, and Natalie sat as still as a statue. I walked to the table and set my binder down. I said nothing. I waited. Eric looked at me, feigning politeness. Dad, would you like to share anything before you sign? I nodded. I would. But not with my words. I pulled out a USB drive. I plugged it into a laptop connected to a projector I had set up. The screen lit up with a video. Eric's voice filled the room, crisp and clear. Once we push the mental evaluation through the court, will assign me guardian rights. Amanda's voice followed. He's paranoid. The cameras, the notes. We just need to make it look worse. I didn't turn to look at anyone. I just said I wasn't losing my mind. I was just observing. No one spoke. Natalie looked at me as if for the first time she realized I was a man who knew exactly what he was doing. I pulled out the wire transfer statement and placed it in front of Amanda. $5,000 sent to a retired doctor to fabricate an evaluation. Signed, Amanda Davis. Transaction date, May 12th. Eric shot to his feet. You put cameras in our house. That's an invasion of privacy. I cut him off. Privacy is for people who live honestly. Those who set traps should expect to be watched. No one argued. No one got angry. Because their script had just been played back in its entirety for the whole audience. And when a false ethical script is exposed, the first thing the writer feels isn't guilt. It's shame. And I let them sit in that shame. No lectures, no anger, just silence. Because the truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to be seen. I once worked with a test pilot who told me, in the moment just before a crash, all the systems go silent. No alarms, no vibrations, no warning lights. Just the anticipation of disaster. I understood that feeling. On Monday morning, I sent the entire prepared file to 3 places. 1. Raymond Hale, my lawyer for the civil suit regarding property abuse and document forgery. 2. Keystone Federal Bank requesting a freeze on all transactions related to the house and any accounts in my name. The local district attorney's office, a full copy with a handwritten note. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking that these actions be reviewed as those of a citizen whose property and personal rights have been violated. I didn't need to watch the news. Raymond called that afternoon. The DA's office has received the file. I can't promise speed, but with the level of detail you provided, I'm confident they won't ignore it. I asked only one question, and the bank Raymond chuckled softly. I just got their response. All accounts linked to Eric have been severed. An expedited transaction freeze is in place. They're referring to you as the priority legal property owner. That night I sat in my room, the yellow lamplight falling on my old files. Amanda hadn't said a word all day. Eric was locked in his room. The air in the house was like the calm before a storm. But what caught my attention wasn't them. It was Natalie. At 9 p.m., she knocked on my door. "Grandpa, can I come in?" I nodded. Natalie entered, still in her oversized sweatshirt and high bun. But her eyes, they no longer darted away. She held out a phone, hesitating. I heard the recording from the other day, when Dad was on the phone with someone in the den. I didn't know what to do. But I can't pretend I didn't hear it. I said nothing. I just opened a drawer and took out a photograph Natalie at 8 years old sitting on my shoulders at the park. She was laughing, her arms thrown in the air. "Do you remember when this was taken?" I asked. Natalie looked at it for a long time. "I remember. You carried me all the way home even though your back hurt. Mom said I should walk, but you just kept saying this is the easiest part of my day." I gave a slight nod. When people grow up, they start to learn the difference between who says nice things and who does kind things. You don't have to pick a side, Natalie. Just pick what's right. She nodded, her eyes moist. "I won't lie. If anyone asks, I'll tell the truth." I watched Natalie's back as she left the room. She didn't need to be on my side. She just needed to not be on the side of wrong. I closed my file. There was nothing left to edit. No more updates needed. The final report had been submitted. Now all that was left was to wait for the system to respond. A day after submitting my final report, I woke up early as usual, brewed black tea, sat at the corner of the dining table where I could see both the living room and the hallway. An old habit from a supervising engineer, always sit in the blind spot of others' vision where no movement goes unnoticed. At 8:03 a.m., Eric's phone rang. I couldn't hear who was calling, but through the cracked door, I saw his reaction clearly. He shot up, grabbed his laptop, and ran upstairs. Amanda was the first to react. She appeared in the afternoon while I was watering the plants. Her voice was as light as a toxic fog. "Dad, this is all going a little too far. You don't want the whole family in court, do you?" I didn't turn around. I want the truth. If it seems far to someone, it's because they've long since strayed from it. She tried to smile, but it shattered in her eyes. "We were just worried about you. You started installing cameras, locking your door, hiding files. How could anyone not think you were getting paranoid?" I raised my head and looked her directly in the eye for the first time in weeks. I wasn't paranoid. I was just acting. Like a man who knew he was being watched. Then it was Eric's turn. That night he knocked on my door. Without waiting for an answer, he opened it, something he'd grown accustomed to doing for over a year. "Dad, this has gone too far. You're destroying this family over a few small misunderstandings." I said nothing. He stepped closer, his voice sharper. "We took care of you, gave you a place to live, handled everything. And now you turn on us. You're playing the victim. I pointed to the chair across from me, my voice even. Sit down. I'll show you what a game looks like. Eric hesitated, then sat. I took a folded copy of the guardianship petition from my pocket. I placed it on the table. Did you sign this before or after you forged my signature on the property deed? Eric stared at the paper. His lips tightened, his hands clenched into fists. A person used to controlling others, when they lose control, rarely fights back with logic. He chose emotion. I'm your son. What are you doing? You want to take your own son to court? What do you want to be in everyone's eyes? I answered slowly, as if reading from a stress analysis report. I don't care what I am in other people's eyes. I only care who I am in the face of the truth. Eric shot to his feet. Without another word, he slammed the door and stormed out. I didn't watch him go. I've seen a broken turbine blade shatter an entire engine housing. But sometimes, all you have to do is cut the power at the right time, and the system will stop itself before it explodes. The next day, Natalie came into my room while I was writing in my notebook. She silently placed a piece of paper on my desk. I opened it, a handwritten statement. I'll submit this if there's an investigation. I heard enough to know who was right and who was wrong. I looked at her. Aren't you afraid your parents will be angry? Natalie nodded but said, I am. But I'm more afraid of living my whole life without daring to stand up for the truth. I said nothing more. I just reached out and patted her gently on the shoulder. For the first time, I saw that the look in her eyes was no longer fear. It was dignity taking form. In structural physics, there's a phenomenon called buckling. When a steel beam that seems incredibly strong suddenly folds under pressure that is concentrated on the right weak point at the right time. It doesn't need an explosion. It doesn't need to vibrate. It just collapses silently. And it can never be restored. My family buckled in the same way. Monday, 9 a.m. I received an email from Raymond. The police will be summoning Eric for questioning regarding document forgery and conspiracy to commit property fraud via a falsified guardianship petition. Amanda is listed as a knowing party with financial involvement. The bank has initiated a full asset freeze. I closed my laptop. I felt nothing. Not relief, not anger. Just completion. Like running a final diagnostic before shutting down a test engine. When everything has been confirmed as no longer safe for reuse. Eric didn't come home that night. Amanda locked her door and didn't come out. Natalie sat on the patio wearing headphones, but listening to no music. I knew. Because she kept looking in my direction, not avoiding my gaze, not anxious. I sat on the wooden bench, holding a cup of cold tea. A breeze drifted in from the backyard. I quietly took an object from my pocket, the key to the secondary safe deposit box, the one Eric thought I no longer used. I placed it on the dining table along with a note. There's no need to hold on to what isn't yours. I will be leaving on Thursday. This house doesn't need me, and I don't need this house to know who I am. That night, I opened my closet and folded my clothes into an old leather duffel bag. The kind I used to carry on out-of-state project inspections, durable, light, and silent, when it bumped against a door. I packed my original file folder, a single handwritten letter for Natalie, a copy of the last final report I ever wrote for my old agency, where I was once recognized as a man who could analyze silent failures. I left no note for Eric. There was no need. Not because I hated him, but because I no longer had a responsibility to explain myself to someone who had deliberately turned a deaf ear to the truth. Late that night, Amanda knocked on my door one last time. I didn't open it. She spoke through the wood. You won. You destroyed everything. I hope You're satisfied?" I didn't answer, because the one who builds a corrupt system will always claim that someone else broke it when it falls. The truth is, it broke itself. I just didn't stop it. I left the house on a Thursday morning, not because I was kicked out, not because I had nowhere else to go. I left because I had stayed long enough to see with perfect clarity that place no longer had a use for my presence other than as a pretext for exploitation. I left no parting message. I sent no farewell letter. I just placed the gate key on the dining table, next to a cold cup of black tea and one final audio recording. Natalie was up early. Perhaps her intuition told her today would be different. She came out to the patio and saw me with my old leather bag. "Grandpa, are you leaving?" I nodded. "You did your part. Now it's time for me to do mine." Natalie looked down. A moment later, she pulled a small jar of blueberry jam from her pocket. "I made it myself. Take it with you." I took it. I nodded. No hug, no tears. Affection doesn't need a performance when it's real. I caught a bus leaving the neighborhood at 7:12 a.m. There was only one other person on it, an old woman holding a cat in a canvas tote. She was dozing. I sat far away looking out the window. It wasn't raining. It wasn't sunny. It was an unremarkable morning, exactly like the day I had moved into Eric's house a year ago. Only one thing was different. This time I wasn't moving to be closer to family. I was moving to be closer to myself. I rented a small room at a lakeside retreat, a place my wife and I had visited twice in the spring. It had a small kitchen, a desk, and a window that looked out onto the woods. No one knew I was there, and I didn't need anyone to know. Every morning I make tea. I jot down a few technical notes, an old habit I can't break. I listen to the jazz music Natalie used to hate, but my wife used to love. I water a plant, and I don't turn on the TV. There is no Facebook, no family phone calls, no one asking me, "Are you sure you remember that correctly, Dad?" I don't need anyone to believe I'm of sound mind. I just need the silence to live as if I am. Sometimes I get a handwritten letter from Natalie. She doesn't apologize on anyone's behalf. She doesn't try to mend things. She's just a girl teaching herself how to write down what she knows is right, even if no one taught her how. I read the letters. Then I fold them, not to show them off. I keep them as proof that someone still knows who the truly sane one in that house was. My name is Franklin Davis. I was once seen as a burden, an ornament. I didn't scream, I didn't threaten, I didn't need the press or social media. I just recorded, organized, and left. I don't need an apology. I don't need to be held back. I don't need to be understood. Because when you know exactly who you are, you don't need anyone on the outside to confirm it. People think silence is surrender, but sometimes it's just the sound of a trap snapping shut. What would you do if your own son tried to erase your name like a line of ink on a contract?